"No soul is tough enough for me," she declared, the colossal Seminole guardian, until she crossed paths with the Drifter. The Drifter had wandered across countless frontiers, convinced he'd faced every sort of danger a wanderer might encounter. But the afternoon he ventured into the rust-hued hollow where Seminole tales cautioned wanderers to steer clear. Well, that's when an uneasy feeling settled in his gut. The quiet enveloping him wasn't ordinary. It was reverence, a kind of dread aimed at the one who commanded this swath of untamed land with unyielding authority. He'd braced for marauders. He'd braced for traps. But her? He hadn't seen that coming. A massive Seminole woman, her stature, her frame, her sheer aura shrinking the earth beneath his spurs. A fighter so notorious that even battle-hardened souls murmured her name like a hex born on the hot breeze. She emerged from the shadow of a ravine ledge with easy authority. Her sinews forged in combat, her flesh etched with emblems of triumphs, her gaze icy with the knowledge that no living man had ever measured up to her. She sized up the Drifter like she was weighing if he'd be worth the swing to shatter. She laid it out plain, no waver or whisper of doubt, that no soul was tough enough for her in body, mind, or soul. And every idiot who dared test that truth ended up slinking off or vanishing into the dust forever. The Drifter didn't push back, but he held his ground too, 'cause he wasn't riding in to bruise her ego. He was hunting a band of outlaws who'd been torching ranches, and their path sliced straight through her domain. She warned him she didn't abide outsiders hauling their messes into her realm. He countered that the messes weren't just his, they belonged to everybody. Rather than admire his steadiness, she found that cool demeanor grating, like he was blind to the myth made flesh right in front of him. That grate sparked into intrigue, then frustration, then a pull she wouldn't let show. When he trailed the outlaws further into the labyrinth of bluffs, she tailed him, half to drive him out, half to gauge how long a fearlessness like his might last out here. She observed him navigate with focus, decipher signs with accuracy, and dispatch a pair of lurkers without a flinch. She figured he'd crow about it. He stayed silent. She figured he'd fold when word came the outlaws tallied near 24. He didn't. He just schemed. She predicted his end. He replied he'd go down standing, not fleeing. She wasn't accustomed to a man seeing her as human, not hazard or hurdle. She wasn't used to anyone who didn't recoil when she closed the distance. When the outlaws hemmed them in at the lip of a tight gorge, she clocked that the Drifter grasped tactics sharper than she'd guessed. He didn't lash out like prey at bay. Instead, he pinpointed the flaws in their lineup and struck them with swift, keen strikes, while she barreled through foes with raw, bone-chilling power. They battled like old partners, each sensing the other's vulnerabilities and shielding them on instinct. When the grit cleared, the final outlaw bolted. She lunged to pursue, but the Drifter caught her wrist. Not to rein her in from ego, 'cause he'd spotted what she'd missed, a fresh trap lurking on the escarpment. She'd have been overwhelmed by the swarm. That truth landed heavier than any strike she'd weathered. He hadn't rescued her from frailty, but from insight keener than hers just then. She skipped the thanks. Didn't need 'em. She just dove back into the fray, this round conceding that maybe power had layers beyond brawn and menace. They pursued the stragglers into the dark, both gashed, both drained, both too stubborn to pull back. She kept eyeing him, hunting for the crack where he'd shatter. That crack never showed. When they crested a bluff peering down on the outlaw's hideout at last, she wondered why he pressed on when any wise soul would have wheeled around. He said, if wrong isn't halted young, it festers. Simple words, but their honesty pierced her deeper than an arrow.
She'd thrived on might. He thrived on meaning. For the first stretch in ages, somebody had handed her a view she hadn't already smashed. She held her tongue, but the concession hung there in the hush between them. She'd sized him wrong. The outlaws figured night cloaked him, but the drifter spied chances in the gloom, and the Seminole Titan saw his assurance wasn't bluster. It was readiness, tempered over years of scraping through scraps no one else survived. She broke down their setup with him, noting how he clocked fire positions, sentry shifts, and ground slopes. She felt a strange stir, a regard she'd never extended to a man. When he floated a stealthy creep-in over a head-on smash, she shot it down flat, insisting finesse was for the frail who couldn't pulverize foes in plain sight. But when he highlighted the captives the outlaws had snatched, families, kids, she got it. He wasn't dodging peril, he was curbing the toll. It chafed her that he was spot on. It chafed her worse that it mattered to her. They dropped on the camp with accuracy, not frenzy. He sliced ropes off the bound while she unraveled sentries with a velocity that rattled the soil. The outlaws scattered in chaos, waking too slow to the fact that yarns of a hulking Seminole scourge weren't tall tales, and that she was locked in with a man who wouldn't be eclipsed by her shadow. When the outlaw chief, a gouged hulk who fancied himself invincible, snatched a boy as cover, the drifter paused a heartbeat, mapping trajectories. The Seminole woman didn't waver. She advanced, looming, imperious, compelling the chief to lock eyes with a force even he dreaded. But dread wouldn't free the kid. She needed the drifter's exactness. No words, no scheme. They flowed into sync. Her feint, his fire, pure, final, perfect. The chief crumpled. The boy breathed, and a change rippled through them. One neither invited, but neither shrugged off. As the liberated kin poured out their thanks, the Seminole woman hung back, uneasy with appreciation she didn't know how to hold. The drifter didn't bask in the acclaim. He just swung onto his mount and geared to depart. She watched, rattled by how he wasn't angling for glory or to own the tale. He was pulling out because the job was finished. She asked why he didn't linger. Why skip the bounty? Why not soak up the awe for toppling a scourge the folks around here whispered about in fear? He gave a half shoulder lift and murmured that right action ain't a deal. She built her days around muscle as the peak of might. Now here was a man who held honor trumped brawn every time. That idea rattled her chains in ways no edge ever had. She shadowed him, not to guard, not to spar, because for once her horizon stretched broader, not narrower. She mentioned how most men chased her favor with boasts or stunts, lunging at the unattainable. He observed that folks hustling to prove their worth already questioned it deep down. Its plainness thrummed in her like a ritual beat. As they headed back to the hollow, she fell in step at his side, not striding point. It wasn't yielding, it was owning it. She probed what he made of her boast that no soul was tough enough for her. He met her eyes steady. No dodge, no debate. He said she got strength twisted. Real grit isn't dominating the rest. It's holding firm to your why, steady in the storm, and dead set against selling out your truth. She'd spent years toppling men in the flesh, but none had ever shaken the roots of what she held sacred. Till him. She wouldn't call it surrender, just that she'd overlooked what grit truly was. He didn't crow, didn't rib. He dipped his head, 'cause grasping beat winning hands down. At the bluff where they'd first locked gazes, she braced for him to spur away, no glance over shoulder. Instead, he reined up and dropped one gem she wasn't primed for. The horizon dwarfed her hollow, and her grit, honed true, could mold more than the lines she patrolled. She loomed there, war-worn, unbroken, yet aware she'd at last found one whose mettle didn't have to mirror hers and bulk to stride level with her. She skipped farewell, just said, "Ride through my stretch again, Drifter. You won't go solo."